You are smart. You have always been smart, and you are still broke. Not broke like you cannot eat, broke like your intelligence and your bank account are living completely separate lives, and nobody can explain why. Most people have an answer for that. They say you just need to manage money better, invest earlier, stop lifestyle creep, make smarter decisions with what you earn. The entire personal finance industry is built on that premise, that the broke smart person has an information problem. That premise is wrong. The broke smart employee does not have a personal failure. They have a positioning problem. And positioning is not something you fix with a budget spreadsheet. It is something you fix by understanding the architecture of the system you are standing inside. The school system, the corporate ladder, the performance review cycle. None of those structures were built to produce wealthy people. They were built to produce valuable ones. And valuable in that context means valuable to someone else. The smarter you were, the more perfectly the machine shaped you into exactly what it needed. Your discipline became their productivity. Your problem-solving became their competitive advantage. Your excellence became their retained earnings. You were not failed by the system. You were its best result. 10 layers, each one sharper than the last. By the end, you will not be looking at your income differently. You will be looking at the entire structure underneath it and finally seeing it for what it has always been. The most dangerous thing the system ever did to you was make you feel like you were winning. Every time you got promoted, the exit got more expensive. Not financially, psychologically. Each promotion added another layer of identity onto the E-quadrant. New title, new responsibility, new lifestyle, new colleagues who now define your professional worth, new sunk cost, years of performance, reputation, all of it tied to a structure you did not own. The employee who gets promoted believes they're ascending. The org chart agrees, but the cash flow quadrant does not care about org charts. It only asks one question: where does your income come from? And after 10 promotions, the answer is still the same: someone else's approval. Promotion is not advancement, it is deeper capture. The higher you climb inside someone else's structure, the more of yourself you leave behind as collateral. The system does not promote you because you earned it, it promotes you because you are too valuable to lose and too invested to leave. That investment is the trap. Now look at the 5 people closest to you professionally. How many of them have genuinely exited the E-quadrant? For most smart employees, the answer is 0. This is not coincidence. Your reference point for what is normal is built entirely from people who are also inside the trap. Everyone around you is intelligent. Everyone around you is also broke relative to their output. So the gap between your intelligence and your wealth never looks like a systemic problem. It looks like a shared condition. And shared conditions do not trigger escape. They trigger acceptance. The smarter your circle, the worse this gets, because smart people do not just accept conditions, they rationalize them. They build coherent, logical, well-articulated reasons why the E-quadrant is actually fine, why the timing is not right, why the risk is too high. You are not just surrounded by people in the trap, you are surrounded by people who are intellectually defending it. Your environment is not neutral. It is actively shaping what you believe is possible. When smart employees feel stuck, they don't quit, they study. Another degree, another certification, another course. It feels like investment. It looks like discipline. Everyone in your life validates it, because getting more qualified is the only form of ambition the E-quadrant recognizes and rewards.
Every new credential is more sunk cost into the institutional identity, more debt tied to validation from a system that will use that qualification to extract more value from you at a slightly higher price. More preparation is not the problem. More preparation pointed at the wrong quadrant is. Credentials answer the question, how do I become more valuable inside this structure? The wealth question is different. No institution profits from you asking it. The system has now captured your ambition, but the deepest layer of the trap is not about what you do with your ambition, it is about when you plan to use it. Every broke, smart employee has a plan. It just starts later. Pay off this debt first, hit this savings number first, get to this title first, get the kids through school first, then make the move, then start building, then take the risk. The delayed life plan feels responsible. It sounds mature, but underneath the surface, it is one of the most effective mechanisms the Quadrant produces, because it converts every future version of you into a future employee. The conditions attached to the plan are not fixed. They move with you. Pay off the debt, new debt appears. Hit the savings number, the number adjusts upward. Get to the title, the next title becomes the new prerequisite. The goalpost is not being moved by the system, it is being moved by you, because the plan was never really about conditions, it was about managing the anxiety of a decision you have not made yet. Freedom, positioned permanently in the future, is captivity with better branding. The most competent person in every office is almost never the wealthiest person in the building. Not the laziest, not the least qualified, the most competent. The one who knows every process, fixes every crisis. That person is broke, not embarrassingly broke, just quietly, persistently, structurally broke. In the employee quadrant, competence does not create leverage, it creates dependency. The moment you become the person the system cannot function without, the system stops investing in replacing you and starts investing in retaining you. Retention looks like recognition, salary bumps, the corner office, but retention is not reward. Retention is the system protecting its own infrastructure.
You became the load-bearing wall. Nobody moves a load-bearing wall, they reinforce it. Every problem you solve makes the cage more comfortable and the exit more costly. Your excellence is the ceiling on your own freedom. Competence deployed exclusively inside the quadrant will never produce wealth. It will produce indispensability. And indispensable people do not escape. They get celebrated for staying. Your brain was not built for wealth. It was built for survival. Somewhere between your first paycheck and your 10th year of employment, your nervous system made a decision you were never consulted on. It decided that income equals approval, and approval equals safety. Every payday triggers a neurological hit of certainty, predictable, reliable, tied directly to compliance. Over time, your brain maps the pattern. Safety comes from the employer. Risk means losing the employer. Losing the employer means losing safety. By the time most smart employees consider leaving, their nervous system has already voted. The anxiety that rises when they think about building something independent is not cowardice, it is conditioning. Biological, systematic, invisible. You cannot think your way out of a nervous system response. The employee who stays broke is not staying because they do not understand the cash flow quadrant. They are staying because every time they move toward the exit, their brain fires an alarm their logic cannot override. A wrong diagnosis is the most expensive thing you can carry. The nervous system needed a delivery mechanism, something that showed up every 2 weeks and rebuilt the conditioning from scratch. The paycheck is not income, it is infrastructure. It is the structural beam around which your entire life gets organized. Your rent is calibrated to it, your family's schedule orbits it. Your identity, quietly and over years, begins to derive from it. The paycheck's power is not in its size, it is in its rhythm. Guaranteed income in 14 days defeats uncertain income in 6 months. not because the math supports it, but because your nervous system does not run on math. It runs on pattern recognition and threat assessment. Salary increases do not produce wealthy employees. They produce more expensive anchors. The employee earning $200,000 a year is not freer than the one earning $25,000. In most cases, they are more anchored. The paycheck is not the reward for your labor. It is the cost of your compliance. And you have been paying that cost every 2 weeks without ever seeing the invoice. Broke, smart employees are not failing. They are succeeding at the wrong problem with exceptional precision. Everything built, the skills, the credibility, the career capital, is real, but it is aimed at a target that was never on the wealth map. Job security and financial freedom are not on the same axis. Advancing in your career does not move you across quadrants. It moves you deeper into the one you are already in. The smarter you are, the better your solutions become, which means the more convinced you feel that progress is real, which means the less likely you are to stop and ask whether you are solving the right problem at all. Someone spends 20 years perfecting the construction of ladders, each one better than the last. One day they step back and look at where every single masterpiece is leaning. Same wall, different heights. Same wall. Intelligence does not accelerate escape. It accelerates investment in the wrong direction. Hard work inside the employee quadrant does not build wealth. It builds the appearance of momentum. Your effort has a ceiling. The organization's profit from your effort does not. Every additional hour invested, every problem solved above job description, every result delivered beyond expectations, the upside of flows upward, not to you, to the structure above you. You can run harder on the treadmill. The treadmill will accelerate to match you. Your position does not change. The inputs are real. The effort is real. The sacrifice is real. But the output is capped in a way that no amount of additional input can break, because the cap is structural, not personal. Working harder is not the variable. The quadrant is the variable. The broke, smart employee is not a victim of a broken system. They are evidence that the system is functioning exactly as designed. The system was built to produce reliable, intelligent, compliant contributors who generate wealth for owners while remaining financially dependent on wages. It needed people smart enough to solve complex problems, disciplined enough to show up consistently, and conditioned enough to mistake employment for security.
That is not a description of failure. That is a product specification. If you have spent years being smart, hardworking, credentialed, promotable, and still financially dependent on a paycheck, you did not fall through the cracks. You went through the intended pipeline and came out the intended result. That is not a reason for shame. It is a reason for clarity. Because a system you understand is a system you can exit. A trap you can name is a trap you can step out of. The moment you stop seeing your financial position as a personal failure and start seeing it as a structural outcome, the diagnosis changes. And diagnosis is where every real change begins. You came in thinking smart people stay broke because they make bad decisions. That is not what you found here. 10 mechanisms, each one running quietly underneath a life that looks like progress from the outside, the promotion that deepened the capture, the peer circle that normalized the cage, the credentials that built more anchor while disguising themselves as ambition, the delayed plan that permanently relocated freedom to a future that never arrives, the indispensability that turned excellence into a ceiling, the biological conditioning that rewired your nervous system to need permission, the paycheck rhythm that made certainty more powerful than possibility, the wrong problem solved with surgical precision, the effort that hit a structural ceiling no amount of harder work can break, and the final inversion. You are not a casualty of a broken system. You are the proof it works. The smartest person in your circle watched something completely different today. They are still inside the mechanism with no name. A trap with no name is a trap with no exit. That changed for you in the last several minutes. It can change for them, but only if they see this. Share this with one specific person, not a mass forward, one person, the one whose face appeared somewhere between 0.5 and 0.8, the one who is brilliant, hardworking, credentialed, and still financially dependent in a way nobody in their circle is addressing honestly. They will not respond the way you expect. Truth rarely lands as a gift on impact, but it compounds. Subscribe, because what follows does not get easier, it gets more precise. Every layer of this channel goes deeper into the psychological architecture underneath money, power, career, and freedom, the mechanisms most creators will not cover, because the viewer has to look directly at themselves to receive it. If you leave now, the next video answers the question this one just opened, and that question is the one you have been carrying without language for longer than you realize. You were never broke because you were not smart enough. You were smart inside a system that was never designed to make you free. Now you have the diagnosis. What you do with it is the only variable left.